Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe that the world revolves around them and that nobody matters. And in this episode, guys, a Karen loses her mind after OP has a seizure, claiming that she's faking it. My goodness, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Hit subscribe if you haven't, and story submissions can be sent right here. And hey, don't shake your heads too hard. A few years ago, I worked in a warehouse for a major retail chain. Part of my role was to load goods for customers into their vehicles. People would often ask the impossible, and we would always do our best, except this one time. So on this day, one really entitled customer comes to collect his 55-inch TV after he ordered it online for pickup. So we pull it from the back and have him sign for it. He then asked us to help put it into his car, so we do. As we're walking to his car, he says, "Oh, you're gonna have to stuff it in the back somehow. The TV's pretty big." Upon getting closer, we realized that it would fit in the back of his car, but only barely. This is when I noticed two small children in the back, and his wife was in the front. We then placed the TV on the ground, and I explained to him that we can't put it inside the car as there will be nowhere for his kids to sit. The guy very firmly tells me that it'll be okay, and he doesn't have far to go. He tells me that he lives about 30 minutes away from the store and that the kids are gonna be fine if we just stuff the TV in the back with them. Now, just to paint you a picture, the TV would fit, but it would have to go on the floor of the car, leaving no room for the children at all. I then explained to him that I don't care if he lives 30 seconds away around the corner. He's not putting that TV in the car with his kids as they'll be squished. I tell him that we can leave the TV at the store and he can collect it later or arrange delivery for $50 or so. At this point, the guy throws a tantrum, saying he's the customer and we have to listen to what he says. He says he doesn't want to pay for delivery and that he wants the TV today, that he doesn't care what I think because I'm only a minimum wage worker and I'll do what he wants. Hearing him say that, it set me off. I was in school to be a paramedic at the time, and I tell him that I've seen enough freak accidents and I will not be responsible for 2 more if anything were to happen to his children. I tell him if he loads the TV in his car with his kids and proceeds to drive off, I will be calling the police and handing over the security footage. I again offer to put the TV back inside and he can collect it later. He then yelled something about us not touching his TV and that he would be complaining directly to corporate and have me fired and that I wouldn't have a job tomorrow. Well, since he made it clear that he didn't want us to help anymore and it was 5 minutes to close, we just shut the door, walked back inside the store to shut things down. When I got back outside to go home, his car and TV were gone, and guess who's standing outside in the dark in an empty parking lot at 9 p.m.? His wife and kids. I asked them if they wanted a ride home, as I was concerned for their well-being, as we're in an area that's not too safe. She denied the ride and thanked me. I guess that TV was really important. I hope it's still keeping him company. Yeah, great dad right there, guys. Leaves his wife and kids behind in an area where OP mentioned it's not safe at night, so he can take his precious TV home. Like, if you knew the TV was gonna be a tight fit, why even bring your wife and kids along, sir? Like, some people need to think a little bit more. And I'm glad OP was there to talk some sense into that guy. So for Christmas, my husband and I put up our lights and some deer that we got from the grandparents. Christmas is a silly holiday, so we position the deer in a humping position. A lot of cars stop to take photos. The children that pass have always had something funny to say, and they generally just laugh about it. Our decorations have been up since the first week of December. So on January 3rd, around 5:40 p.m., I heard the doorbell ring about 5 times. At first, I thought it was my husband being silly, but when I opened the door, I was greeted by a Karen. And then the following happened. Karen basically says, "Hi." I reply, "Hello? How can I help you?" Karen says, "Yeah, you got a lit up couple of deer out here." I tell her, "Yeah." And Karen says, "And your deer are humping each other." I say, "Correct." And she responds, "Why do you have that?" Now, I was obviously taken aback by all these questions, and I say, because we like to?" And Karen says, "No, to be vulgar." I then start to explain, but Karen interrupts me and says, "You provide vulgarity for the rest of us to drive by, and all the kids see that?" I say to her, "Well, all the kids that pass by find it funny." She then interrupts me again and says, "You know what? It's really vulgar. You know that." I then interrupt her and say, "Sorry, did you just come to my house to reprimand me for my deer?" Karen says, "Yes, like Satan." She starts to walk away. And I say, "Oh, well, I like Satan." The woman is still walking away and she says, "I guess you do." I then talk over her and say, "Hail Satan. Merry Christmas," slamming my door. Karen says, "Oh, there's no Mary." Now, we were planning on taking down the decorations last night anyways, and we did. Except now we have 3 deer that are still out on display. The stag on the doe and the second doe with its face in the stag's butt. Just for you, Karen. Okay guys, so I'm sharing this post because it's stirring up a lot of controversy in the comments. A lot of people are saying that OP is the entitled Karen in this post, and they shouldn't be doing that with their decorations. And guys, here are the pictures of before and after. I mean, yeah, it is what animals do, and to be fair, in the daytime, you probably won't even notice this. But guys, let me know, is it offensive or is it funny? Is OP the Karen for doing this and keeping it up? Or is that Karen being entitled for harassing OP for his decorations? So I have epilepsy, but it's very weird. Like, I don't have grand mal seizures very often, but I do get absent seizures. And also those seizures where you shake but don't convulse. Well, this all happened when I was in high school. All my teachers knew about my absent seizures, including the Karen teacher. I had just been put on medication, and the main side effect was having seizures more often. On this day, I had an absent seizure in Karen's class, and my friend who sat next to me began trying to snap me out of it. The following occurred, and I was told by my friend later what happened. So apparently, Karen screams, "OP, why aren't you doing what I told the class to do?" My friend tells her, she has epilepsy, she's having an absent seizure, just let me get her back to reality. At that, Karen teacher then says, "No, my cousin has epilepsy and convulses when he has them. She doesn't have epilepsy, she's faking it. OP, if you don't do what I assigned in the next moment, you will have detention." My friend then tells her, all teachers know about the epilepsy, and there's doctor documentation that says she does indeed have it. You can't send her to the office for detention for a medical issue that she has no control over. Karen says, "I can so, and I will do so when I see fit. If you don't like it, you can go with her." Now to note, I've only had 2 grand mal seizures my whole life. Once when I was 16, and once when I was 18. I haven't had one since then, thank God, but I definitely suffer from epilepsy. My friend continues arguing and says, "I'll report you to the Board of Education if you try to do that. That's not her fault." At this point, another friend comes in and says, "Yeah, she's got a medical condition, so therefore you can't send her out by law for this." Karen teacher then proceeds to ignore everything anyone says, and she screams, "OP, wake up now, stop lying, you don't have epilepsy." She then reaches out to touch me, and my friends both jumped up and guarded me. As with absent seizures, you don't touch a person when they're in one. Another student then went to go get the principal, who has Karen taken to the office, and then I snapped out of it, thank God. The Karen teacher ended up getting fired for intimidating students and trying to put her hands on a student without their permission. Recently, she found me on Facebook, and she berated me for getting her fired. I found out that her own kids had to be taken, and they were put into the foster care system. It turns out the kids were taken because she didn't believe her youngest had an allergy to peanuts and purposely packed them PB&J sandwiches for lunch to prove that her daughter was faking the allergy. Her daughter almost died from anaphylaxis. Yeah guys, I don't know how this woman got her teaching degree at all. Keep her away from all the young ones. And I'm glad she got everything she deserved. Like, there's been so many stories I've read where teachers accuse students of faking things like allergies, breaking bones, seizures, like any sort of health issue. And I mean, yeah, there's a lot of kids that do that for attention, but I feel like every student should be taken seriously, Karen. This person shares a comment and says, "When I was a kid, I had a classmate with Tourette's syndrome, and her tic was to suddenly flap her hands in front of her for a moment. Now, we had a teacher who was adamant that Tourette's syndrome was new age malarkey, and that the solution was discipline. So after about a month of shouting at her and constantly sending her to the principal's office, her father brings her to school one morning and verbally ripped the teacher a new one in front of the whole class with threats of lawsuits." So back in 2019, I bought a condo. I hadn't been moved in more than 10 days when I get a knock on the door. I live in a building that only has apartments on the 2nd floor and a communal area below us. I like the location because I don't have to worry about being loud to people beneath me. Well, this Karen knocks on the door and I open it. The woman says, "Hi, I'm Karen and we share a wall." I say to her, okay, can I help you?" She says, "So I've done the pricing on having my outlets sealed and you need to pay half because I can smell the food you're cooking since you moved in. It's seeping through the walls and I don't like it." I say to her, "Oh, excuse me, what?" She says, "I do not like the smells coming from your house. It makes me nauseous. Stop cooking what you're cooking." I ask her, what smells are causing you to feel sick? Karen says, "The cabbage and onion smells, and sometimes you cook fish. It's unbearable." I say to her, maybe you should hustle down to Bed Bath & Beyond and buy one of those fancy, expensive scented candles. She says, "No, I need you to pay half for having my outlet sealed or stop cooking those foods." I tell her, no, I'll cook what I want to cook in my apartment that I bought. There are no rules that say I need to avoid cooking fish or cabbage. Also, onions are a primary ingredient in a lot of world cuisines. I will continue to use all of these ingredients. Karen then says to me, "Well, I paid for my apartment as well, so I don't want to be subjected to your nasty smells. Stop it." I tell her, okay, here's the deal. I'm gonna close the door, and if you want to improve your home by sealing the outlets, that will not stop the smell. You are entirely within your right as a homeowner to do that. However, you will do it at your own expense. Moving forward, there's no reason for you to interact with me unless there's a legitimate issue with the wall or the pipes that we share. She then says to me, "Well, that's just rude. You are being rude." I tell her I'm unconcerned with how you feel about me or the food I cook. There's no reason for you to ever talk to me again unless it has to do with our shared walls and pipes. Goodbye. I then shut the door and went back to my business. And a couple of days later, the HOA manager knocks on my door to talk to me about the issue. I tell her that I'm not entertaining any of this, that the two of you can call the police and send them out to arrest me over the cabbage, onions, and fish, but I will not stop cooking it. The HOA leader laughed out loud, and then she told me she just wanted to be sure that things were calm and there's no issue moving forward. I told her that we would be cool if Karen minds her own damn business and didn't concern herself with my dietary decisions. It's been 3 years now, and I see Karen regularly. We don't interact unless necessary, and we did have a pipe burst during the 2021 winter storm, and that's when we got together to threaten to sue the HOA when they said they wouldn't fix the pipes. There was no problem. Afterward, we went back to peacefully coexisting without having to be friends or interacting with each other. And I still cook cabbage, fish, and onions. The audacity of some people, right? You need to stop cooking what you like to eat because the smell bothers me. And yeah, of course, you can argue both sides of this, guys. Like, if smells are seeping into your homes that you don't like, that's an issue. But also at the same time, you can't expect someone to stop cooking the foods they like to eat. And hey, I'm glad things worked out for the both of them. Okay, so yesterday, my 46-year-old disabled bum went shopping. I went to my local supermarket, parked in a disabled bay with my blue badge on display. I had a mask on because I have a cold and a weak immune system. Now, I will state that I hate wearing them, but I have enough wrong with me to put up with the temporary discomfort. So, at this point, in comes Karen, almost making the ree noise. Seriously, her voice was full on fingers on a blackboard, and I pity any dogs nearby. And she screams, "You! Hey, lard ass!" Now, I have a gut, true, but a good deal of it is due to stage 5 polycystic kidney disease, and both my kidneys are hugely swollen due to the swelling that the disease causes. The rest, I'll admit, is my love of food, and I'm working on losing some weight. I am also perma in pain, perma nausea feeling, and arthritis ridden, so I walk on bad days with a pronounced limp. I then turn to face her, ready to fake losing my temper, and I'm pretty damn tall too, so when I look or get angry, watch out. The Karen screams, "You're not disabled, you can walk, and you don't need masks. It's an American control conspiracy." I don't even speak. I open the car, pull out the blue badge, flip it over to show my photo on the rear, and put it back in the car when she tries to snatch it. I then lock the car and point to a rear window sticker that states, "Not all disability is visible." I then just walk into the supermarket, and as I'm literally picking up a couple of items, I don't bother with asking for a mobility shopping cart. And ding ding, round 2. Karen's gone to the customer service desk and she's reported me for having a fake blue badge, and she's given my license plate. I hear my plate being called and go to the service desk, having grabbed what I was there for, and Karen's standing there, looking like she thinks she's got me. The guy on duty is my best friend's dad, and he just looks at her and says, "I know him, ma'am. He's disabled, and I know he has a blue badge." He then tells me to hand over my shopping so he can ring it up from me. And that's the point where Karen triples down and I guess tries to rip my mask off in front of the security guard. At that, she gets banned from the store and placed on the security blacklist. Chances are, she might have got herself banned from a lot of shops in town. At least I hope so. I then get escorted to my car by an employee just in case she tries again. Hopefully Karen learns before she has to go out of town for her shopping. Some people just need to mind their own business, guys. Like, does this woman have nothing better to do than to police handicapped parking spots and then actually go to customer service to report people? It sounds to me like Karen needs a megadose of mind your own damn business. That's what she needs. So here's a fun story for you. It's about me acting rich and entitled for a day, and how I was treated like royalty at car dealerships. So here's how it went down. This story took place in the late 1980s. I was just 19 years old, working as a junior car salesman at my local Volkswagen dealership in the UK. It was a great job. It paid well, although the working hours were long. So while talking with one of my senior colleagues one quiet summer Saturday morning, I half-jokingly suggested that we kill some time and go test drive the brand new M635 at the BMW dealership up the road from us. There were no customers around, and we were both a little bit bored. Now, there was no way I could afford this thing, as I was a teenager and being quite new to the workforce. But I thought to myself, if I take a brand new 16V Golf GTI with me from our dealership, I might be able to convince the BMW salesman that I was serious about trading it in to get the M635. My colleague was unable to join me, but challenged me to see if I could pull it off. Now okay, this might not look like the most amazing car these days, but in 1999, it was the dog's nuts. And at 13,129 pounds, it was the most expensive hot hatch at the time. So I drove up to the BMW dealership in Summertown, parked the brand new Golf on the forecourt, and casually sauntered towards the M635, all gleaming and menacing in the showroom. Now, those of you that know about these things will know that the 1989 M635 CSI was the last of the model to be made. It had 286 horsepower of Bavaria's finest, and in those days, it was one of the most desirable cars that you could buy. So I trotted in and I acted like I was a wealthy, entitled 19-year-old snob whose parents were filthy rich. The salesman eyed me for what seemed like an eternity. A 19-year-old teenager looking at a very expensive car, I think he had some sort of doubt, and that's when I opened my mouth and said, look, so my dad just bought this for me, a 16V Golf for my birthday. I need something better, faster, top of the line. Money's not an issue. My father's a very rich businessman. Hearing me say that my father was a very rich man, I could see the twinkle in his eyes. The guy says, sure, are you thinking of the 635? We have a demo if you want to take it for a spin. At that, I played hard to get for a second or two, acting like I was better than a 635, that it was insulting for him to suggest a 635 to me. He then offered to get me a coffee or water, and I said I had to take a short business trip real quick, a 30-mile drive, and I'll come back and take a proper look later in the day. And you know what they say, if you let the customer leave the lot, there's a good chance they won't come back. I knew this tactic, and I never thought it would work. The guy then says to me, why don't you just leave me your Golf and you just take the 635? You can bring it back tonight or even tomorrow morning if you get back after we close. Hearing him say this, I was stunned. Okay, I was wearing a nice suit and I was driving a brand new Golf GTI, but I never thought it was this easy. I hesitate for a second, speechless, before muttering as much nonchalance as I could under the circumstance, saying, you know what, I like you. And for that, I will take it for a spin because I'm sure my dad would love to take a close look at the car that he's about to buy me. Are you sure it's okay for me to take it? The man tells me to take my time and make sure my father sees all the features of the car. I tell him, oh, don't worry, consider the car sold already. My dad's so rich. Less than 5 minutes later, I was edging this beautiful straight six masterpiece out into morning traffic, grinning like an idiot. I drove straight back to the Volkswagen showroom to show my colleague that I succeeded. He had a huge, toothy smile on his face, and he was clearly impressed that I managed to get the car, and even more impressed that I secured it for a whole day. He then laughs and says, don't stop here, mate. Why don't you take it to the Porsche dealership and see if they're interested in trading it for a new 911? At that, I was giddy with excitement. Could I really pull this off twice in one day? It was only around 10 o'clock in the morning, and I had the whole day ahead of me. So I bet my colleague 20 pounds that I would be back in less than an hour in a 911, and I set off up the road. About halfway between the Volkswagen dealership and the BMW dealership was an independent Porsche specialist. Again, I drove straight into the parking lot acting like I owned the place and that I was bleeding money. I casually walked up to the salesman, and with my confidence growing and a flashy smile I say, morning, it's a great day to test drive a brand new 911, don't you think? The salesman shook my hand and he looks out onto the yard and says, "Ah, the BMW M635 CSI, he says. "It looks pretty new. Are you thinking about upgrading already?" I say to him, No, I've only had it for a few weeks. Listen, I love it and all, but my dad bought it for me for my birthday and I don't even want it. I'm looking for something convertible for the weekends, and my dad totally didn't remember that. Now, you have to remember, this was the 1980s, the decade of conspicuous consumption, yuppies, and newly minted millionaires. And where I lived, Oxford, was awash with wealthy people, so this wasn't a totally ridiculous scenario. My heart at this point was pounding in my chest. I was convinced that I was about to be discovered, but the salesman didn't blink. After making me a coffee, a little small talk, and taking the BMW keys as security, I was out the door in a bright red, 6-month-old Porsche 911 Turbo convertible, scarcely believing what I'd gotten away with. The guy even offered to have the BMW washed and polished while I was gone. Now, this was a £100,000 car, a huge amount in 1989, equivalent to about £250,000 in today's money. I still remember clearly bursting into almost hysterical laughter as I drove out of sight of the dealership and floored that flat 6, charging back down the road towards my work. Back at my dealership, my coworker was shaking his head with a look of slightly bewildered admiration as I arrived. I then shouted at him, "Ta-da!" grinning like a school kid as I pulled up. I'd only been gone like 15 minutes. So we then take the 911 out to the local pub for an early lunch, and we sat there for an hour before getting serious about the next challenge. My coworker looks at me and says, "What do you reckon? Do you think you can go one better again?" There's a used car dealership that's close by that sells Ferraris and Lamborghinis. His voice then trailed off, and we stared at each other for a few seconds. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I spent the afternoon driving around in a bright yellow Lamborghini Countach. After we spent the hour charging around in the Lambo, laughing at how easy it was, we started the process of returning all the vehicles one by one. All of the cars had been returned and no one was any the wiser. Now, how was I treated at all the different dealers by acting a little spoiled and filthy rich? Like royalty. Everyone fell over themselves to do my bidding. Certainly way better than one would expect at a normal dealership. Yeah guys, I was half expecting OP to say that he was caught at the end of this. Like, I don't think something like this would be that easy to pull off nowadays, guys. But in the late 80s, I don't know, I couldn't tell you. Like, things might have been relaxed back then, and people might have been more trusting and naive, I don't know. Great freaking story nonetheless, and for a 19-year-old to pull that off, and to be driving around in supercars for an afternoon, kudos to you, OP. What a legendary tale, and I'm friggin' jealous, I'm gonna say that. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our / entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I hope you didn't shake your heads too hard, and if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance, where a boss fires OP and then begs for him to come back because, you know, they need him. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.